The buzzing energy of the art gallery hummed like an invisible current beneath Chloe Bennett's feet as she navigated the space with practiced ease. She blended into the room, her black leather boots padding silently against the polished floor, her camera slung casually over one shoulder. The light dress shirt she wore, rolled at the sleeves, complemented the fitted jeans that allowed her freedom of movement. Her sharp eyes scanned the room, cataloging every detail. The swirling conversations, the glint of champagne glasses, the angular shadows cast by avant-garde sculptures. She wasn't here to socialize. This was work and she took it seriously. For Chloe, capturing moments through her lens was more than a career. It was her armor. She had made a pact with herself years ago, a silent but ironclad vow to never let anyone or anything distract her from her ambitions. Love, with its chaos and unpredictability, was an unnecessary variable. She'd seen it derail too many lives. Her parents' tumultuous divorce and the heartbreaks of friends served as constant reminders. Chloe had no intention of becoming another casualty. Across town, Harper Ellis adjusted the cuffs of her impeccably tailored navy blazer, her demeanor cool and composed. She walked into the gallery as if the world owed her space, the sleek heels of her pumps clicking confidently on the tiled floor. Harper exuded control in every step, her sharp features softened only slightly by the loose waves of her chestnut hair. Her career as a divorce attorney had honed her into a woman who saw love for what it truly was, a gamble with high stakes and almost inevitable losses. Witnessing marriages disintegrate had left its mark. Harper had no interest in exposing herself to the same vulnerabilities she advised her clients to escape. The event was a charity gala for emerging artists, a mix of the city's elite and creative souls. Harper had come at the insistence of a colleague, but she found herself drawn to the photographs lining the far wall. Dark, haunting, and raw, the images seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The work was both visceral and tender, capturing fleeting moments of humanity, laughter, sorrow, defiance. One photograph in particular, of a child standing resolutely against a backdrop of urban decay, caught her attention. Harper leaned closer, her pulse quickening as if the image itself demanded her full attention. "Impressive, isn't it?" A low, confident voice broke her focus. Harper turned her head to find Chloe standing beside her, arms crossed, a slight smirk playing on her lips. The subtle scent of cedarwood and bergamot wafted from her, and Harper felt an inexplicable pull, as if the photographer carried the same magnetic charge as her art. "I was just thinking that," Harper replied smoothly, her usual sharpness giving way to genuine intrigue. "The perspective is unique." Chloe tilted her head, studying Harper with an intensity that made the attorney feel momentarily off balance. "Unique's a safe word. You're a lawyer, aren't you?" Harper blinked, momentarily caught off guard. "What makes you say that?" Chloe shrugged, her smirk deepening. "You have the look. Confident. Polished. Strategic." Her gaze lingered for a fraction too long, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her dark eyes. "Also, you didn't compliment the photo outright. You dissected it." Harper chuckled softly, recovering her composure. "I'll take that as a compliment. But what about you? Let me guess. Artist? Or maybe just an unusually perceptive observer?" "Both," Chloe admitted, brushing her fingers lightly over the strap of her camera. "But mostly I take pictures. I let them speak for me." "Chloe Bennett," Harper read aloud from the placard next to the photograph. "Well, Chloe, your work is remarkable." The sincerity in Harper's voice surprised them both. Chloe's expression faltered for just a moment before she recovered, her voice tinged with humor as she replied, "Careful. Flattery might get you a discount." The banter between them flowed effortlessly, each line laced with a mix of challenge and curiosity. Harper found herself leaning into the conversation, drawn not only by Chloe's wit but by the undercurrent of vulnerability she could sense beneath it. Chloe, for her part, was struck by Harper's ability to hold her gaze without flinching, a rare trait in the people she encountered. The air between them grew heavier, charged with an unspoken tension neither dared to name. Their conversation meandered, touching on art, ambition, and the merits, or lack thereof, of vulnerability. Harper found herself unusually candid, admitting her cynicism about love in a way that felt both liberating and terrifying. Chloe listened intently, her sharp features softening as she responded, "Sounds like you've got a fortress built around you." Smart but lonely. And you don't. Harper countered, her voice edged with curiosity. Your work has walls written all over it. Chloe's smile faded, replaced by something quieter. Maybe. But sometimes the cracks make for the best photos. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. For a moment, the noise of the gala faded into the background, leaving only the steady rhythm of their breathing and the unrelenting pull of their eyes locked together. Neither woman moved, as if stepping away might break the fragile connection they'd stumbled upon. Finally, Harper cleared her throat, the spell broken but not forgotten. Well, Chloe, I should let you get back to observing. It was a pleasure. Likewise, Chloe said softly, her voice carrying a note of something unsaid. As Harper walked away, Chloe found herself watching her retreating form longer than she cared to admit. For two women who had promised themselves they'd never fall in love, the cracks in their fortresses were already beginning to show. Neither realized just how much the other had already begun to seep through. The morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Harper Ellis's office, bathing the room in a muted glow. The city skyline stretched out behind her, a reminder of the fast-paced, high-stakes world she navigated daily. Harper leaned back in her leather chair, fingers steepled in thought as she reviewed the latest case file. A high-profile celebrity divorce had landed on her desk, the kind of case that demanded precision, discretion, and the ability to navigate a media frenzy with ease. He was used to this. What she wasn't used to was the nagging thought of Chloe Bennett intruding on her focus. She had debated for hours before making the call, pacing her apartment the night before as her internal arguments battled. Hiring Chloe was a calculated move, or so Harper told herself. Chloe's raw talent with a camera was undeniable, and the case demanded visual documentation of assets and events for both court proceedings and damage control. Yet Harper couldn't ignore the undercurrent of personal motivation. Since that night at the gallery, Chloe had lingered in her mind in ways Harper couldn't rationalize. And that terrified her. When Chloe's phone buzzed with Harper's name flashing on the screen, her eyebrows arched in surprise. She had all but resigned herself to their encounter being a one-time event. The request was straightforward. Harper needed a photographer for a sensitive case. Chloe hesitated, her professional instincts battling with something deeper. The idea of being in Harper's orbit again made her pulse quicken in a way she didn't want to acknowledge. Reluctantly, or perhaps eagerly, she agreed. Their first meeting on the case was in Harper's office. Chloe arrived with her usual ease, her camera bag slung over one shoulder, her boots clicking softly against the marble floors. Harper stood as Chloe entered, her professional mask firmly in place, but her gaze lingered just a moment too long. Chloe took in the room with a quick, discerning glance before settling her eyes on Harper. The atmosphere between them shifted immediately, charged with an undercurrent of tension neither could entirely conceal. So this is the case, Harper began, gesturing toward a series of files laid out on her desk. Her voice was steady, clipped, betraying none of the unease she felt. It's messy as you'd expect, but we need visuals. Assets, interactions, anything that could solidify the narrative we're building. Discreetly. Discreet's my specialty, Chloe replied, her tone neutral, though the ghost of a smirk tugged at her lips. She stepped closer, her fingers brushing the edge of one of the files as she glanced at the contents. And you're sure I'm the right person for this? Seems like something a big-name media photographer would handle. Harper's eyes met Chloe's and for a moment the room seemed to shrink. I don't want a big name, Harper said, her voice softer but no less firm. I want someone I trust. The weight of her words hung between them, unspoken truths woven into the silence. Chloe's smirk faded, replaced by something quieter, almost contemplative. All right, she said finally. I'm in. The days that followed were a delicate dance of professionalism and unspoken tension. Chloe shadowed Harper to meetings and events, her camera capturing the intricacies of a case that felt more like theater than law. But it wasn't the celebrity drama that held her attention. It was Harper. The way she commanded a room, her sharp intellect, the rare moments when her cool demeanor cracked, revealing flickers of vulnerability. Harper, for her part, struggled to maintain her composure. Chloe's presence was disarming in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the warmth of Chloe's voice or the easy confidence in her movements. It was the way Chloe seemed to see her. Truly see her beyond the polished facade she presented to the world. Their interactions grew more charged as the project progressed. A teasing comment from Chloe here, a lingering glance from Harper there. The tension between them simmered beneath the surface, unacknowledged but impossible to ignore. One evening, a last-minute session brought them to an empty art gallery Harper had rented for privacy. Chloe moved through the space with her usual grace, adjusting lights and angles as Harper observed from a distance. The faint hum of the storm outside provided a soundtrack to their silence. As Chloe packed up her equipment, Harper approached, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. "You're good at this," Harper said, her voice quieter than usual. Chloe glanced up, her expression unreadable. "It's just a job," she replied, though the look in her eyes betrayed something deeper. "Is it?" Harper asked, taking a step closer. The air between them felt heavy, almost suffocating. For a moment, Harper thought Chloe might say something, but the photographer only shook her head, a wry smile playing on her lips. Before they could say more, a sharp crack of thunder echoed outside, followed by the patter of rain against the gallery windows. "Perfect," Chloe muttered. "Guess I'll be swimming home." Harper hesitated before speaking. "I'll call a cab. We can share." The ride home was cloaked in silence, the kind that felt more intimate than any conversation. The cab's interior was dim, the city lights casting fleeting shadows across their faces. Chloe sat close enough for Harper to catch the faint scent of her perfume, something woodsy and warm that made it impossible to think clearly. Harper stared out the window, her fingers clutching her bag as if it might anchor her to reality. But it was Chloe who broke the silence, her voice soft but steady. "Do you always carry the weight of the world on your shoulders?" Harper turned, startled by the question. "Excuse me. You seem tense," Chloe said, her lips curving into a faint smile. "Just an observation." Harper wanted to snap back, to deflect as she always did, but the look in Chloe's eyes stopped her. It wasn't judgmental or mocking, it was curious, almost tender. Harper's defenses wavered, but before she could respond, the cab pulled to a stop in front of Chloe's building. Chloe opened the door but paused, glancing back at Harper. For a moment neither moved. Then, in a gesture so brief it might have been imagined, Chloe's fingers brushed against Harper's arm. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a jolt through Harper, her breath catching in her throat. "Good night, Harper," Chloe said softly before stepping out into the rain. Harper watched her disappear into the building, her mind a whirlwind of emotions she didn't know how to name. For the first time in years, the fortress she had so carefully constructed around her heart felt unsteady. And it was all because of Chloe Bennett. The project dragged Chloe and Harper into a rhythm neither had anticipated, a collision of their worlds that neither could seem to control. Every shared glance, every exchange of words, felt like a taut string stretched further with each passing day, threatening to snap. What should have been straightforward, work pure and simple, turned into a slow-burning torment. Chloe was no stranger to attraction, but this was different. She felt drawn to Harper in ways that unsettled her, in ways she couldn't name or suppress. In meetings, Harper maintained her characteristic composure, her voice steady, her posture perfect. But Chloe could see the cracks forming. The flicker of her eyes when their hands brushed reaching for the same file. The sharp inhale when Chloe leaned a fraction too close to adjust a camera angle. Chloe found herself drawn to those moments, testing the boundaries, teasing with carefully calculated comments. "I thought lawyers were supposed to be unflappable," Chloe said one afternoon, her voice laced with amusement as she caught Harper's gaze lingering on her a moment too long. "You're making me reconsider." Harper narrowed her eyes, her lips curving into a tight, reluctant smile. "And I thought photographers were supposed to stay behind the camera. You have a habit of inserting yourself into places you don't belong." Their banter was their shield, but it betrayed them both. Chloe's smirks, Harper's clipped responses. They were cracks in the armor, glimpses of emotions they couldn't contain. The breaking point came during a business trip to Washington, where Chloe was hired to photograph a private event related to Harper's case. The day had been long, filled with stiff interactions and carefully orchestrated professionalism. They spent hours navigating sterile conference rooms and swanky hotel lobbies, both growing more frayed as the day wore on. It was during a rare moment of respite, sitting on the balcony of their hotel's private lounge, that Chloe found the opportunity she hadn't realized she'd been waiting for. Harper, uncharacteristically relaxed, had allowed herself a glass of wine. The tension of the day seemed to melt away as they overlooked the city skyline, the noise of traffic below a distant hum. So even lawyers can take a break, Chloe quipped, snapping a quick photo of the view before swiveling her lens toward Harper. Smile. Harper rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress the grin that bubbled up as Chloe made an exaggerated face behind the camera. For the first time Harper laughed, really laughed, a sound so full and unrestrained that Chloe froze, caught in the raw beauty of the moment. Without thinking, Chloe clicked the shutter. The sound broke the spell and Harper's laughter faded as she turned to see Chloe lowering the camera, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing?" Harper's voice was sharp, her earlier ease evaporating. "You didn't ask." Chloe frowned, taken aback by the sudden shift. "Relax. It was just a photo." "Of me," Harper snapped, rising from her chair. "Without my permission." Chloe stood as well, her own irritation flaring. "Since when do you care about that? You're in public cases every day, your face is everywhere." "That's different," Harper shot back, her voice rising. "This is personal." Chloe's jaw tightened. "You think I don't know the difference?" "I wasn't trying to invade your space, Harper." Harper turned away, her hands gripping the balcony rail. "You don't get it, Chloe. You don't understand what it's like to have every part of you on display, to have no control over who sees what, who decides what you are." Chloe hesitated, her frustration giving way to something softer. "You think I don't feel that every time I pick up a camera? My whole life is about capturing people in moments they might not want the world to see. But this," she gestured to the camera hanging around her neck, "this wasn't about control. It was about you. I wanted to keep that moment." Harper turned, her expression conflicted. "Why?" The word hung between them, heavy and raw. Chloe opened her mouth to respond, but the truth felt too big, too dangerous. Instead she shook her head, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Because you're not who you pretend to be. I see it every time you look at me like you're about to run but can't make yourself move." Harper's defenses crumbled. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Chloe stepped closer, her voice quieter now but no less intense. "Every time we're in the same room I feel it. The way you avoid me, the way you can't stop watching when you think I don't notice. You're scared, Harper. And it's not just me you're scared of, it's everything you feel when I'm around." "Stop," Harper whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Chloe took another step, her hands trembling slightly. "Tell me you don't feel it and I'll walk away." The challenge hung in the air and for a moment Harper looked like she might take it. But then something shifted, anger, fear, longing, and before either of them could think, Harper grabbed Chloe's wrist, pulling her close. The kiss was anything but gentle. It was a clash of all the emotions they had buried: anger, frustration, desire, fear. Chloe's hands found Harper's face, her camera dangling between them as she leaned in, deepening the kiss. Harper's grip tightened, her barriers finally shattering as she let herself feel everything she had spent years denying. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless, their foreheads pressed together. Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "This wasn't supposed to happen." Chloe's lips curved into a small, bittersweet smile. "But it did." And for the first time neither of them tried to deny it. The city outside Harper's office was a blur of lights as the evening descended into darkness. She sat at her desk, hands clasped tightly together, staring at the finalized files that signaled the conclusion of one of the most complex cases she'd ever handled. It should have been a relief, but the weight in her chest told a different story. The end of the case also meant the end of her professional connection to Chloe. And the thought of that, of Chloe walking out of her life, left her feeling untethered. Over the past weeks, Harper had struggled to reconcile the truth. Chloe had become more than an employee, more than an inconvenient attraction. She had become a mirror, reflecting every crack in Harper's carefully constructed armor. Harper had spent years avoiding this exact feeling, this vulnerability, this uncertainty. And yet here she was, unable to imagine returning to her cold, calculated world without Chloe in it. Across town, Chloe sat in her dimly lit apartment, scrolling through the photos she'd taken over the course of the project. Each image told a story, but her mind kept returning to one. Harper laughing on that Washington balcony, her defenses momentarily down. Chloe had looked at that photo countless times, trying to decipher what it was about Harper that left her so undone. She wanted to walk away to protect herself from whatever this was turning into, but the pull was too strong. That's when the email came. The subject line, Accidental Truths, caught her attention immediately. It was from a journalist she'd worked with in the past, someone notorious for digging up details about high-profile cases. Chloe's stomach twisted as she opened it. Inside was a short message along with an attachment. A set of documents showing that Harper had originally contracted another photographer for the case, only to cancel and hire Chloe shortly after their encounter at the gala. Chloe's heart sank. The timing wasn't a coincidence. Harper had orchestrated their second meeting. What did that mean? Had everything between them been a calculated move on Harper's part? Or was there something deeper, something Harper hadn't been able to admit even to herself? Chloe grabbed her jacket and headed out into the brisk night air, her mind spinning. She needed answers. When she arrived at Harper's office, the attorney looked up in surprise, her usually calm demeanor faltering at the sight of Chloe's stormy expression. "Chloe? What are you? Why didn't you tell me?" Chloe interrupted, throwing the printed documents onto Harper's desk. Her voice was steady but her eyes burned with betrayal. "You had another photographer lined up. You didn't have to hire me. So why did you?" Harper stared at the papers, her throat tightening. She didn't need to read them to know what they said. "I can explain," she said softly, rising from her chair. "Then do it," Chloe demanded, her voice breaking. "Because right now it feels like you've been playing me this whole time. Was I just some experiment? Some convenient distraction?" "No," Harper said sharply, stepping around the desk. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it, Harper?" Chloe's frustration spilled over, her voice rising. "Because I have no idea what I'm doing anymore and you've been keeping secrets." Harper hesitated, her chest heaving as she struggled to find the words. "I hired you because I couldn't stop thinking about you after that night at the gala," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw something in you, something that terrified me and drew me in at the same time. I didn't know what to do with it, so I found an excuse to keep you close." Chloe's lips parted, her anger giving way to shock. "You what?" Harper ran a hand through her hair, her composure unraveling. "You're right, Chloe. I've been playing it safe my whole life. I've built walls so high that even I don't know what's behind them anymore. And then you came along with your sharp eyes and that damn camera and suddenly I couldn't hide. You make me feel things I don't know how to deal with." The raw honesty in Harper's voice left Chloe momentarily speechless. She took a step back, her arms crossing defensively. "So what, Harper? You decided to mess with my life because you couldn't figure out yours?" "No," Harper said firmly, closing the distance between them. "I decided to take a chance. I just didn't realize how much it would scare me." Chloe looked up at her, the anger in her expression softening into something more vulnerable. "You could have told me. You didn't have to control everything." "I'm not used to letting people in," Harper said, her voice trembling. "But I'm trying. For you I'm trying." The weight of Harper's words settled over them and for a long moment neither spoke. Chloe searched Harper's face, her own emotions warring within her. Finally she sighed, the fight draining out of her. "I don't know if I can trust you, Harper. But I can't walk away either." Harper's breath hitched, her hand reaching out tentatively to brush against Chloe's arm. "Then don't. Stay. We'll figure this out, together." The vulnerability in Harper's eyes was a plea, and Chloe felt something inside her shift. She nodded, her voice barely audible. "Hey. But no more secrets." Harper's lips curved into a tentative smile, her hand sliding down to clasp Chloe's. No more secrets. Later that night they found themselves walking along the Brooklyn Bridge. The city sprawled out before them. The air was crisp, the distant hum of traffic mixing with the sound of their footsteps. Harper glanced at Chloe, who walked beside her, their hands brushing occasionally. "For the record," Chloe said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I'm still mad at you." Harper chuckled softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Noted. And for the record, I'll probably mess up again. But I'll try not to." Chloe looked at her, a small smile playing on her lips. "Good. Because I'm not here to fix you, Harper. I'm just here." Harper stopped walking, turning to face Chloe fully. "And that's enough." Their fingers intertwined and they stood there for a moment, the world around them fading into the background. Together they began to walk again, the bridge stretching out ahead of them. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't certain. But it was real. And for the first time both of them were ready to take the risk.